The room was silent, the kind of silence that hums in your ears when you're finally alone with your thoughts. And in that silence, a question echoed: are you becoming stronger, or are you quietly slipping into irrelevance? It wasn't a motivational poster moment, it was survival. Every day you either sharpen your edge or dull into mediocrity. For most people, comfort is the enemy they embrace. But for a rare few, the discomfort of growth becomes their compass. Somewhere in a modest home office in Milwaukee, Thomas sat at his desk at 5:03 a.m. He wasn't a millionaire or a guru. He was a man with a decision. His hands hovered over the keyboard not because he didn't know what to write, but because he was tired. The same tired most people feel before sunrise. But Thomas had made a vow, one that didn't depend on mood, weather, or praise. He would advance by 1% today, just 1%, not because he had to, but because the alternative was decay. Improvement is not a luxury. It's not a weekend hobby or a podcast playlist. It's oxygen. You either breathe it in, deeply, painfully, intentionally, or you suffocate under the weight of wasted time. The average man believes he has infinite tomorrows. But the disciplined man knows that today's 1% compounds in silence, invisible to the naked eye, but inevitable in its arrival. Fortune does not favor the dreamers, it bows to the prepared. Thomas had read Machiavelli, not as a philosopher, but as a war tactician for life. Machiavelli didn't romanticize ambition, he dissected it. He taught that the ruler who waits for war to prepare is already dead. The builder who stacks one brick every day, quietly, coldly, will someday find himself surrounded by a fortress, and when the storm comes, as it always does, the fortress will stand, unmoved, unbroken. This isn't about some hustle culture hype, it's about math. 1% better every day isn't a slogan, it's exponential resilience. It's what makes a man quietly rise above mediocrity until one day, those who never noticed him wonder how he became untouchable. Because while others hesitated, he acted. While others posted quotes, he lived them. While others begged for motivation, he showed up, again and again and again. So Thomas wrote. He wrote for 57 minutes. No one saw it, no applause, no dopamine hit. Just discipline. When he stood up, nothing around him had changed, but something within him had. And that shift, repeated daily, would become a mountain. This is your mirror now. Are you waiting for motivation? Are you confusing noise with momentum? Or will you advance just 1% today? That's the only question that matters. The world doesn't care how you feel, but it notices what you build. Comment below. I advance 1% every day. The world worships intensity. We idolize overnight success, dramatic transformations, and sudden fame. But intensity without consistency is a spark in a storm. It flashes, then fades. What builds power, real lasting power, is what no one sees. It's quiet, it's invisible, and it's relentless. That is the silent weapon of consistency. Thomas understood this now. It wasn't about doing more in one day. It was about showing up every day, even when it felt useless, even when progress seemed microscopic. There's no glory in waking up early to sharpen your skills when no one is watching, no applause for choosing the difficult path again and again. But in that stillness, a strange truth begins to grow. The man who does the invisible work becomes invincible. Look around. Most people want the show, the likes, the validation. They chase energy bursts, fueled by coffee and motivational reels. But their power dies at the first sign of fatigue. Their walls are untested, and when pressure comes, those walls collapse. Why? Because they were never built to endure. Machiavelli warned of this. Do not trust appearances. What looks strong may be hollow inside. What looks quiet may be indestructible. Thomas had no interest in appearing strong. He was too busy becoming unbreakable. Each morning, as others slept, he built a habit, a system, a mindset. There were no shortcuts, just bricks stacked in silence. That's how fortresses are made, not by grand gestures, but by devotion to the process, day after day, cut by cut. Cold psychology supports this truth. People respect what endures. It's easy to be impressive for a moment, much harder to be unshakable for years. When you show up without excuse, you stop being a man, you become a force. They ask, how do you keep going? But they don't understand. You're not chasing hype. You've made consistency your identity, and identity compounds into destiny. So Thomas didn't post about his grind. He didn't seek permission or motivation. He just built. Brick after brick, word after word, action after action. Over time, his silence made noise. His absence from distraction became presence in purpose. He wasn't flashy, he was inevitable. And this is what the world fears most. Not the man who bursts in loudly, but the one who never disappears. The one who outlasts them all. The one whose work speaks long after others are forgotten. Consistency is not exciting. It is not viral, but it is king. And for the man who serves it daily, the crown is inevitable. Comment below, consistency is my crown. Improvement is not just motion, it's not a treadmill of effort. True progress requires vision. Without it, you can run full alt speed and remain trapped. This is where most people fall. They work hard, grind endlessly, and still stay stuck, because they never ask the deeper question, what am I aiming for? What am I really building? Thomas knew this trap. He'd been in it for years, busy, tired, ambitious, but blind. That changed the day he stopped chasing noise and started sharpening his perception. Machiavelli once wrote that the successful ruler sees opportunity where others see chaos, not because he has better luck, but because he sees through the fog. That is the Machiavellian eye, the trained ability to notice what others miss. The truth? Opportunity rarely looks like a golden door. It looks like discomfort. It feels like struggle. It hides in plain sight, wrapped in challenge. Most men wait for conditions to be perfect. They want the path to be clear, the risks to be gone, the signs to say, guaranteed. But by the time that moment arrives, if it ever does, the real opportunity has passed. Thomas began to train his mind like a strategist. Every morning wasn't just about routine, it was about awareness. Where was the leverage? Where was the crack in the wall? What small edge could he find today? Whether it was refining his writing, spotting a gap in the market, or confronting a personal weakness, he hunted for the unseen advantage. Cold psychology tells us fear is the greatest blinder. Fear of rejection, fear of risk, fear of failing again. These fears distort vision. They make men reactive, hesitant, dependent. But when Thomas began detaching, when he treated fear as data instead of destiny, he began to see. The moment he stopped needing certainty, he started creating advantage. This is not cruelty, it's survival. The strategist does not cry in the storm. He maps it, he learns its rhythm, he bends it. That's what Machiavelli meant. That's what Thomas did. He didn't wait for comfort. He sharpened his senses in chaos. Stoic realism confirmed it. Life is not fair. It is not stable. The prepared thrive, not because they are lucky, but because they expect adversity and build for it. While others waited for the rain to stop, Thomas built a roof. While others prayed for peace, he built during calm. So when the chaos came, and it always comes, he was ready. You want to rise? Then train your vision. Look beyond the obvious. Stop reacting and start calculating. Ask yourself, what is the world ignoring? What is my competition too afraid to see? What am I overlooking in myself? Opportunity is always there, but only for the man who sees. Comment below. I see what others miss. Discipline. It's a word thrown around like a badge of honor, but few truly understand it. Discipline is not punishment. It's not a set of rules. It's not about willpower once in a while. It's the backbone of sovereignty. Without it, nothing lasts. With it, you become unshakable. Thomas didn't start with discipline. He started like most people, motivated, inconsistent, emotional. He chased energy and avoided discomfort. But over time, he saw the truth. Motivation fades. Discipline remains, and that shift changed everything. He began treating discipline not as a burden, but as a weapon. Every small decision, every repetition, every moment he resisted the easy path, that was sharpening the blade. The world teaches indulgence, chase comfort, reward yourself, take breaks. And yes, rest has value, but not when it's a mask for avoidance. Machiavelli warned that true power is forged long before the battle. Armies are not made on the battlefield. They are made in the discipline of preparation, and Thomas built himself the same way, quietly, in the dark hours when no one was clapping. He began with simple rules. Wake up at 5, write for 1 hour, no excuses. That became non-negotiable. It didn't matter if he was tired, uninspired, or overwhelmed. The rule was the rule. And with every act of obedience to that rule, he gained power, not over the world, but over himself. And the man who rules himself cannot be ruled by anyone. Cold psychology explains it best. People respect control. If you can't master your own habits, no one will trust your leadership. If you fold under pressure, your words carry no weight. But if you show up every day, if you execute without emotion, if you endure without complaint, people take notice, even in silence. Thomas stopped explaining. He stopped announcing his plans. He just built, quietly, brick by brick. That's the paradox. Discipline is invisible until it becomes undeniable. At first, no one saw the difference, but over months it showed, in his calm, in his precision, in his presence. Discipline isn't about heroism. It's about choosing the 1% every day, even when it feels small. That 1% becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. Identity becomes empire. If you want to change your life, stop chasing miracles. Build rituals. Replace emotion with execution. Replace desire with duty. Replace excuses with action. Comment below. Discipline is my throne. Fear and control, two forces that shape every interaction, every decision, every system of power. Most people run from fear. They see it as weakness, something to escape. But the truth is, fear, when understood, is leverage, and control, when mastered, is freedom. Thomas had lived long enough to see how fear ruled the lives of those around him. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being alone. It was everywhere, masked as politeness, indecision, people-pleasing. But once he started observing, really observing, he saw it clearly. Most men were not choosing their lives. They were avoiding pain. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved, not because cruelty is superior, but because fear creates stability. Love is conditional. It fades. It shifts. But fear, when blended with respect, becomes a force that lasts. Thomas understood this. He wasn't looking to become a tyrant. He wanted to become immovable. That required consequence. Fear, real fear, doesn't come from threats. It comes from certainty. When people know you will enforce your boundaries, that your word carries weight, they move differently. They speak more carefully. They hesitate before crossing you. Not because you shout, but because you don't need to. Your silence says enough. Your track record of follow-through is louder than any warning. But fear alone isn't enough. Without respect, it decays into resentment. That's where discipline returns, because people respect what endures. They respect those who hold the line, especially when it costs them. Respect is earned when you show consistency under pressure, when you don't break your code for convenience, when you hold your values even when it's lonely. Cold psychology reveals this. People constantly test limits. They push to see if the line moves. If you bend once, they remember forever. If you stand firm, they adjust. Fear anchors the line. Respect maintains it, and both together build authority. Thomas didn't dominate others. He simply mastered himself. He spoke with intention. He acted with precision. And when lines were crossed, he responded, not with emotion, but with decisiveness. No begging, no warnings, just consequence. And over time, people learned he was not to be played with. Stoicism deepened this power. The Stoic man does not rage. He does not panic. He does not explain. He enforces, quietly, firmly. When others try to provoke, he gives them nothing, and nothing is terrifying to the manipulator. This is not cruelty. This is sovereignty. Weak men hope to be liked. Strong men choose to be respected. The untouchable man is not loud. He is simply unmovable. Comment below. I rule with fear and control. The strongest fortress is not built of stone. It has no gates, no towers, no guards. The strongest fortress is the human mind, disciplined, prepared, and untouchable. But most men leave it unguarded. They open the gates to doubt, distraction, envy, and weakness. Then they wonder why they collapse in crisis. Thomas knew this truth too well. Years ago, one betrayal had shattered him. A friend turned enemy. A trusted partner walked away. He spiraled. Anger, grief, confusion. His mind was unprepared, wide open, defenseless. That pain taught him what no book ever could. Without mental discipline, nothing else matters. Machiavelli once warned that rulers who wait for war to build defenses are already lost. Peace is when fortresses must be built. In the same way, your mind must be trained before the storm, not during it. Thomas began fortifying himself brick by brick. He started with thought. Every thought is a soldier. Some defend you, some betray you. Fear, jealousy, self-pity, these are traitors within. They whisper lies, they weaken your gates, and if left unchecked, they overrun the entire castle. So Thomas learned to observe, to interrogate every thought. Is this strengthening me or sabotaging me? Cold psychology reveals people will try to breach your mental walls. Through criticism, through gossip, through subtle doubt. If you react emotionally, you open the gates, but if you respond with silence and detachment, they find no entry point. Thomas mastered this. Insults became echoes, rejection became feedback, pressure became training. But a fortress is not only walls, it's also gates. Most men let anything in: social media, toxic opinions, drama. Thomas learned to guard his gates with precision. He filtered his inputs. No gossip, no distractions, no weakness. Only what served his growth: books, strategy, skill, silence. And then the hardest part: pain. Stoicism taught him pain is not destruction, it's material. Fire can burn or forge. Every betrayal, every failure, every disappointment became a brick. Each scar reinforced the walls, and slowly he became immovable. Over time, people noticed, not because he spoke louder, but because nothing seemed to rattle him. The noise didn't touch him. He moved with purpose, responded with calm, advanced without apology. They felt his walls without ever seeing them. The mind, once fortified, becomes your greatest weapon. It is your last defense, your ultimate throne. And when it is guarded well, no enemy, not betrayal, not failure, not loss, can penetrate. Comment below. My mind is my fortress. Most people want to win now. They want the wealth now, the status now, the transformation now. They sprint into success, hoping for instant reward. But what comes quickly rarely stays. And what is built slowly, with strategy, becomes unshakable. That's the power of the long game. Thomas learned this the hard way. In his early years, he chased every shiny opportunity. Crypto booms, quick-fix business schemes, viral content hacks. None of them lasted. He burned out. He lost money. More importantly, he lost time. Until he realized you can't build an empire with fireworks. You build it with stone. Machiavelli warned against depending on fortune. Fortune is like the weather, unpredictable, dangerous, and indifferent. The wise man does not beg for luck. He builds in anticipation of its betrayal. He plans for drought in times of rain. He prepares for collapse in times of peace. That is the long game. Thomas changed his entire approach. He stopped asking, "What's the fastest way?" and started asking, "What's the most enduring way?" Every decision became filtered through one question: does this serve the throne I want 10 years from now? If not, it was discarded. This required sacrifice. While his friends took spontaneous trips or chased trends, he studied. He worked on long-term skills: writing, investing, critical thinking. He missed out on hype. But over time, those distractions faded. His foundation remained. Cold psychology shows most people are driven by impulse. They can't think past the weekend. That makes them predictable, and predictability is vulnerability. But the man who plays the long game becomes invisible at first, then inevitable. He plants seeds others ignore, and when the harvest comes, they call him lucky. Stoicism gave Thomas the patience to endure the invisible phase, the part where nothing seems to happen. The days when effort feels wasted. But 1% daily is deceptive. It hides its power until it's too late to stop. What feels like nothing today becomes unstoppable in time. People laughed at his slow path, mocked his discipline, tempted him with shortcuts. He stayed silent. Because the long game is not loud, it's not for applause. It's for legacy. And when it's played right, no one remembers your competition, only your results. Play the long game. Sacrifice speed for strength. Trade noise for precision. And one day, you won't just succeed. You'll dominate so thoroughly, they won't know how you did it. Comment below. I master the long game. Power is not something handed to you. It is claimed, then maintained. And it is maintained by two forces older than kings: respect and fear. Alone, they are fragile. Together, they are indestructible. Every great leader, every unshakable presence is built on this balance. Thomas used to think he needed to be liked. He thought kindness would be his strength. But time taught him otherwise. People admired his gentleness until they didn't. They smiled, then they took advantage. When he finally enforced a boundary, they vanished. That's when he learned. Without fear, respect is conditional. And without respect, fear becomes dangerous. Machiavelli said it clearly. It is safer to be feared than loved. But what he really meant was this. Fear creates structure. Love is emotional. It fades under pressure. But when people fear the consequences of disrespect, they behave. And when they respect your values, they follow you. So Thomas stopped chasing approval. He built standards. He enforced boundaries, not with yelling, not with threats, but with calm consequence. If someone lied, they were removed. If someone crossed the line, they weren't warned. They were gone. Over time, people learned. His silence had weight. His words meant action. He didn't need to repeat himself. But again, fear is not enough. Fear without respect breeds hate. People will plot against what they fear but do not admire. So Thomas lived by discipline. He didn't just enforce boundaries, he embodied them. He was consistent. He showed up. He didn't waver. And that made people respect him, not because he demanded it, but because he proved it. Cold psychology tells us people test limits, always. If you let something slide once, they push again. But when you respond immediately, consistently, and without emotion, they adjust. You become the line that doesn't move. That reliability is power. And Stoicism perfected the equation. A man who controls his anger, who punishes without rage, who protects his peace without apology, is more feared than the loudest tyrant. People fear what they cannot read. And Thomas became unreadable. Not mysterious, just unshakable. Walk into any room, and the man who needs nothing commands everything. He doesn't need to speak loudly. People lower their voices. They notice his presence, not because of charisma, but because of consequence. This is not cruelty. This is protection. This is sovereignty. Weak men try to earn love. Strong men build a kingdom no one dares to challenge. Comment below. Respect and fear guard my throne. At some point, the pursuit of progress transforms. It's no longer about checking boxes, hitting goals, or proving something. It becomes about presence. A presence so solid, so calm, so inevitable that you are no longer a person chasing success. You are the force that draws it in. That's what it means to be untouchable. Thomas didn't get there overnight. He went through the fire. He lost money, friends, and confidence. He was betrayed. He was underestimated. He was left out. But instead of collapsing, he learned. Instead of reacting, he observed. And slowly, he began building the version of himself that nothing external could touch. Being untouchable doesn't mean storms stop coming. It means storms can no longer move you. It doesn't mean people stop betraying you. It means betrayal no longer breaks you. It means that no matter what happens around you, your center holds. Your decisions stay aligned. Your values remain intact. Machiavelli compared fortune to a river. When calm, it appears harmless, but when it floods, it destroys the unprepared. So build dams while the sun shines. Build defenses while others relax. And when chaos comes, they will drown. You will rise. Thomas practiced this daily. He removed attachments, not to people, but to outcomes. He cared, but he didn't depend. He gave, but he didn't beg. He loved, but he didn't cling. Detachment gave him control, not coldness. Control of himself, his reactions, his time. Cold psychology teaches us that those who are hardest to control are those who need the least. Thomas trained himself to need very little, just clarity, consistency, and silence. The less he needed, the more powerful he became. He wasn't owned by comfort, by opinion, by fear. And that terrified people more than anger ever could. Stoicism supported this armor. The Stoics taught, control only what is yours to command, your thoughts, your actions, your responses. Everything else, let it pass. That's not surrender, that's strategic detachment. It's what makes you unbreakable. Picture it. A man enters a room. He doesn't announce himself, but people turn, not because of charm, but because they sense weight, they feel it, that calm, that clarity, that silence that says, I cannot be moved. That's what Thomas became, and that's what you can become. Not through noise, but through discipline. Not through drama, but through detachment. Not by chasing control, but by releasing what you never needed to hold. Comment below. I am untouchable. This is the turning point, the edge where talk ends and transformation begins. You've heard the words. You've absorbed the philosophy. But none of it matters unless you act. Knowledge without execution is just decoration. Insight without movement is delay, and delay is death to power. Thomas reached this point too. After months of silent growth, he stood at the threshold of a new identity. He wasn't the same man anymore. He no longer craved praise. He didn't chase approval. He wasn't fueled by fear. He had built something within himself, a foundation deeper than motivation, stronger than emotion. But here's the truth no one tells you. Even after all the work, the temptation to stop never disappears. The doubt creeps in. The desire to coast grows louder. People will call you obsessive. They'll tell you to relax, to be more normal. But what they're really saying is, please don't rise too far above me. It makes me uncomfortable. Machiavelli warned that the world fears the man who rises too far without needing permission. That man is dangerous, not because he harms others, but because he reveals what others are not. When you build quietly, when you endure consistently, when you sharpen daily, you become the mirror no one wants to face. Thomas accepted this. He didn't try to please everyone. He wasn't here to make others feel safe. He was here to become undeniable. And so, he doubled down. No more hiding. No more apologizing for ambition. No more diluting his power for the comfort of others. Cold psychology confirms it. People don't respect potential. They respect performance. They don't follow the man who might. They follow the man who did. Thomas understood that execution is the only language the world responds to. Not plans, not dreams, results. Stoicism sealed the mindset. The obstacle is the path. Pain is information. Delay is training. Every setback is raw material. Use it, shape it, rise through it. That's how legacies are formed. So this is your moment. Not later, not when it's convenient. Now, decide. Will you return to comfort and wait for another sign? Or will you step forward and make this the moment you became untouchable? Because in the end, the world doesn't remember what you intended to become. It remembers what you built. Comment below. I command my destiny. Success isn't accidental. It's engineered, not with hope, but with structure. Not with hype, but with strategy. At this level, you're no longer reacting. You're constructing every part of your life with intent. This is where most men fail. They think mastery is effort. But real mastery is architecture, it's systems, it's design. Thomas didn't just wake up early. He built a system around it. He didn't just write. He tracked progress, refined his process, and adjusted his workflow. He removed friction from his routines. He cut out unnecessary choices. His morning wasn't just a habit, it was a ritual, optimized and protected. Machiavelli understood systems long before the term was common. He advised rulers to fortify not just with weapons, but with governance, predictable structures that make chaos irrelevant. Systems outlast storms, strategy survives emotion. That's what Thomas adopted. His life was no longer run by mood, it was run by principle. Discipline got him started, systems kept him going. Every decision flowed from clarity, no more mental fatigue from daily negotiations with himself. No more, should I do this today? The system answered for him, and that freed his mind to focus on creation, not resistance. Cold psychology calls this decision architecture. Your environment influences you more than your willpower, so Thomas changed his environment. He cleaned his space, he removed distractions, he scheduled deep work time, he eliminated inputs that didn't serve his output. When willpower faded, the system remained. The Stoics would have called this preparation of the inner citadel, designing your habits so they hold even when chaos hits, so that when motivation dies, your default behavior remains honorable. That's the power of systems. They remove weakness from the equation. By now, Thomas no longer needed hype to act. He didn't rely on good days. Every day was treated with the same respect. Every hour had purpose. That didn't make him robotic. It made him sovereign. And here's the irony. People around him still didn't understand. They thought he had discipline. But what he really had was design. You want to be consistent? Build systems. You want to endure? Remove friction. You want to rise? Automate the fundamentals. Comment below. My system is my strength. Power draws attention, and attention invites challenge. The higher you rise, the more eyes watch, not to cheer, but to see if you'll fall. Many people find challenges difficult, but a determined individual sees them as opportunities for growth. Thomas had reached that point. His steady accomplishments began to be noticed. People saw his calm demeanor, the quality of his work, and his consistent progress. Some felt inspired by his example, while others were unsure how to react. Some friends and colleagues found it hard to relate to his new path. His journey was a gentle reminder of personal potential, a concept that everyone considers differently. This is an interesting aspect of personal development. As you advance, your presence can highlight different approaches to life. Your focus can serve as an example, showing what is possible and encouraging others to consider their own goals. Sometimes, this can lead to misunderstandings. People might interpret your focus as being distant or your new confidence as something else entirely. It's natural for them to have questions about your new direction, as a person's dedication can be inspiring for everyone. When you expose what is possible, those who've chosen mediocrity must justify their comfort. So they criticize your intensity, they mock your silence. But none of it matters, because you didn't come to be understood, you came to build. Thomas understood this now. He didn't argue, he didn't defend his path, he simply continued. Because when your focus is internal, the external noise becomes irrelevant. That's not apathy, it's clarity. He knew the path was narrow, that fewer people would join him the further he climbed. But that solitude wasn't loss, it was refinement. Cold psychology says this is natural. Human systems resist disruption. The status quo wants to protect itself. So when someone breaks patterns, wakes up earlier, says no more often, delivers without excuse, the system reacts. Not because you're wrong, but because you're different, and difference threatens comfort. The Stoics taught, endure this quietly. Do not explain to those committed to misunderstanding you. Do not water yourself down to ease their fears. You are not here to fit in. You are here to become. So Thomas walked through their doubt without breaking stride. His integrity spoke louder than their opinions. His results silenced their projections. And over time, many who once doubted began to imitate, not because he convinced them, but because results cannot be ignored. Understand this, the more you rise, the more resistance you'll face. Not from enemies, but from comfort addicts. Do not fight them. Outlast them. Comment below. I rise through resistance. At the edge of mastery lies the principle few ever reach, neutrality. True strength is not force, it is balance. You're no longer thrown by praise or insult, success or failure, gain or loss. You respond, but you are not ruled. This is emotional sovereignty, and without it, every other gain is fragile. Thomas had spent years building his habits, sharpening his mind, and strengthening his presence. But it was only when he learned to stay neutral in chaos that he became truly unshakable. That doesn't mean he stopped feeling. It means he stopped being owned by what he felt. Machiavelli understood emotional neutrality. He advised rulers to avoid decisions driven by anger or affection. Passion is a storm, and a leader in a storm capsizes. A composed individual, one who observes situations without being easily swayed, develops significant inner strength. This approach involves celebrating achievements with grace, preventing overconfidence from leading to missteps. It means choosing not to engage in trivial disputes and maintaining focus even when challenged. This behavior stems not from apprehension, but from a profound sense of self-mastery. It is a steadfast control, deeply rooted in personal values. This demonstrates that when an individual maintains emotional balance, they naturally inspire admiration. While others might seek a reaction, by responding with thoughtfulness, peace, and a steady presence, one demonstrates profound resilience. When people witness such consistent composure, they often develop a genuine respect for their steadfastness. This wisdom emphasizes the importance of separating what happens from the meaning we choose to assign to it. A harsh word is just sound, a failure is just feedback, a delay is just time. It is our judgment that creates suffering. Thomas began removing judgment. He stopped making things personal. Everything became information. Everything became training. He applied this everywhere, in meetings, in conflict, in setbacks. While others spiraled into frustration, he stayed still. While others overreacted, he watched. And because he watched, he adapted. Because he didn't break, he advanced. And here's the paradox. The more emotionally stable he became, the more others lost control around him. His presence exposed their volatility. His calm made their chaos louder. And without ever raising his voice, Thomas began leading entire rooms. True power is silent. True strength is still, not passive, deliberate. When you feel everything but are ruled by nothing, you become the rarest man in any room. Comment below. I move, but I'm not moved. Every journey has a threshold, the moment when you stop looking forward and realize you've already become the man you once admired. Not because of one moment, but because of countless small decisions stacked in silence. This is the arrival point, not of perfection, but of embodiment. Thomas stood in his office, just like every morning. Same chair, same routine. But something was different. He wasn't searching for a breakthrough. He wasn't fighting the old doubt. He had become the standard he used to chase. Calm, focused, commanding, and most importantly, free. Not free because life had no challenges, but free because those challenges no longer dictated his responses. Machiavelli said fortune controls only those who are unprepared, but the prepared man, the disciplined man, the sovereign man, he bends fortune. And Thomas had become that man. His days were no longer about grinding, they were about refining. His decisions weren't reactive, they were strategic. He moved deliberately, spoke precisely, built quietly. And the world began to bend to his gravity, not because he asked, but because he became undeniable. Cold psychology reveals a truth most miss. When you no longer need validation, you receive more of it. When you stop chasing approval, people give it freely. Why? Because certainty attracts. And Thomas had certainty, not in the world, but in himself. That kind of presence can't be faked. It must be forged. The Stoics describe this as inner peace, earned through outer discipline. Peace, not as the absence of chaos, but as control within it. A man who's been tested and remained. A man who's been betrayed and stayed whole. A man who's failed and returned stronger. That's peace. And that's power. Thomas didn't announce this transformation. He didn't broadcast his evolution. He lived it, and people noticed. Some drew closer, others disappeared, but none could deny that something had shifted. He had become untouchable, not because he was above others, but because he was no longer beneath himself. And now, the mission shifted. It was no longer about him. It was about building for others, about teaching by example. About creating legacy, not with noise, but with presence. This is your future if you choose it. This is the man waiting on the other side of your excuses, not a hero, not a myth, just you, disciplined, focused, sovereign, free from chaos because you forged yourself in it. Comment below. I live what I once chased. This is where it all comes together, not in theory, not in intention, but in identity. Everything you've built, every early morning, every silent choice, every brick of discipline, it wasn't about goals. It was about becoming. And now, you are no longer building toward a throne. You are sitting in it. Thomas didn't arrive here by accident. He didn't stumble into strength. He earned it, not with loud ambition, but with quiet execution. He had become a man who no longer chased validation, comfort, or shortcuts. He was no longer ruled by moods or opinions. He wasn't seeking the spotlight. He had become the flame. The paradox is this: when you become untouchable, you no longer need to prove it. Presence replaces explanation. Precision replaces noise. You walk into rooms and people feel it, not because you command attention, but because your integrity radiates through every step. Machiavelli taught that power is not seized by chance. It is claimed through design. Thomas had lived that design. He built systems, mastered his thoughts, embraced discomfort, and detached from dependency. And now his life had structure, not rigid but unshakable. Not flashy, but undeniable. Cold psychology explains why this matters. In a world addicted to performance, the man who no longer performs becomes magnetic. He doesn't beg for respect. He emanates it. He doesn't fear loss. He uses it. He doesn't resist pain. He molds it. The Stoics would nod in approval. Because Thomas was no longer reacting to life, he was shaping it, not by controlling the outside, but by mastering the inside. He couldn't stop storms, but storms could no longer stop him. He had become sovereign. And now the final truth. Your transformation is not complete when the world applauds. It's complete when you no longer need applause. When your path becomes your reward. When your silence becomes your statement. That is the apex of the journey. So what now? You pass it on. You lead by example. You sharpen others, not with words, but with your presence. You live in such a way that your discipline becomes a mirror, your actions a map, your mindset a fire others can feel. And when the world asks how you became this, how you built a mind they couldn't shake, a life they couldn't ignore, you won't need to answer. You'll simply continue. Because becoming untouchable was never the end. It was the beginning. Comment below. I am the fire. I am the fortress. I am untouchable. If this message has stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts below, your story, your progress, your truth. Let the world hear you. This is Mental Fort. Here, we don't build followers, we build sovereigns.